What's up? What's up? What's up? Hey guys, and welcome to the Find Your Flow podcast. My name's Mike Graham, and I'm your guide and host as we go on this incredible adventure together today. And really, the idea of this podcast is to have conversations with ordinary people who are living an extraordinary life. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome today's guest. Tom, how's it going?
Yeah, it's not going too badly. Thank you. Hi, welcome.
Great. Tom, it's so nice to have you. How long have we known each other, Tom?
A long time.
Right?
We first met each other back in 2012, back on the football pitches of South London.
South London.
The Clapham South days.
It was so funny. It was so funny. Before we started this podcast, I asked Tom to send me some pictures of us together so I could share, so that we could get any questions from yourselves, the audience, the listeners. And some of the photos, they seem from another life, right, Tom? They seemed, we've known each other so long.
Many different lives.
Many different lives. And I think for me, one of the reasons I wanted to get Tom on this podcast, guys, is Tom is someone who, if you don't mind me saying, Tom, very ordinary guy, right? Very ordinary guy, but living an extraordinary life, and not by chance and not by just woke up one day and all of a sudden had this extraordinary life. Just very much flowed his way, sometimes unflowed, sometimes had to reflow, sometimes had to restructure stuff, whatever that means. But we'll discover that. And I think one of the things I've really come to admire about Tom is how he has such a logical concept to many things. We'll see him talk about some of even before we were talking about an idea that you're thinking of launching very soon. And just an incredible individual when it comes to pursuing and finding yourself and finding the flow you want to live, right? Tom doesn't really like to be called a digital nomad. Maybe Tom is a digital nomad, but he lives an incredible lifestyle. Last year he was in Cape Verde, there for a month, just living the lifestyle, sending photos to us and the rest of the friendship group. And yeah, Tom, what have I missed? You're obviously big on your sports as well. Like Tom said, we met playing football back in Clapham Common in London. Shout out to CCFC.
Whoever might be watching this now, Andy.
Yeah. Where it all started, right? And that was an eclectic bunch of people. But Tom, listen, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit to the audience, so that then we can talk about flow and what it means to you, and kind of how you created such an incredible life for yourself.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know where to start, but I guess the basics are, I'm German. I spend most of my life living in, a lot of different countries. I think I counted 6. I'm in my 6th country now in Spain.
6 countries?
6 countries, yeah.
You were born in India, right? Born in India.
Yeah. Lived in the Middle East, so Jordan and Israel, for about 5 years in my teen years. And before Spain, I've been living in Spain for about a year now. I'm not actually a nomad, as Mike would say. I'm pretty fixed until I'm not. But before Spain,
I'm fixed until I'm not.
Pretty planted until I'm not. I'm sure we'll talk more about the travel plans later in the podcast. But I was in the UK in London for about 10 years before that, where things for a long time stopped flowing. I guess that's probably part of the story. But living in Spain now, very multinational upbringing, lives in a lot of different places. And yeah.
Do you think you're multinational? Because I think that is something we have in common quite a lot, right? You and I. I think with you, what's quite funny is when we go out and we meet people and we play the game of guess where Tom's from, right? No one ever guesses India.
Oh, no. It's very confusing for people, because I think the way I look, I don't think I look super German either. So I think people are so bamboozled. It's like I'm very culturally ambiguous across the board, so it's always a guessing game.
It's
Keep
so
me
true.
Guessing as well too. I'm not sure I know the answer to the questions, to be honest, but keeps things interesting, keeps things mysterious.
It's so true.
Easy to stay mysterious when you don't even know. So,
It's so true. It's so true. Do you think that your travel, because I think, that's one thing we really have in common, kind of the way we've traveled, not the way we've traveled, but the fact we've traveled to so many different countries, lived in different countries. You've done some incredible travel, for example, the Mongol rally, which we should probably talk about at some point. But yeah, you've done some incredible travel. Do you think that that's helped you in your perspective of creating your flow, or like what it must have had an impact, right? Like what kind of impact did it have with you?
Yeah, traveling is a tricky one. Depends on the reasons for traveling. I've traveled for many different reasons, sometimes for good reasons, sometimes for not good reasons, i.e. escapism. But it's definitely always an enriching experience, a learning experience. It is usually some sort of learning. There's something that adds value to your life every time, like a new friendship, new perspective, new experiences, new contacts, new languages, there's always something you get from the experience. So traveling, I think, especially if you go at it with an open mind and sort of an open heart, you really, really can have the opportunity to enrich your life. That's one of the things I love about traveling is the adventures, the potential to kind of do other things, meet new people. You're so open as well, right? When you travel, especially if you kind of travel the way I do, you really do a lot to kind of keep yourself open to new experiences. When you're open to new experiences, a lot of very cool stuff.
I mean, I know how you travel, Tom, right? Like, we travel similarly sometimes, but for the audience who don't know you, right? How do you travel? How do you travel in a way that enables you to have that opening experience? I think, for example, Mexico could be a great example. When we went to Mexico, right? Sometimes people go to Mexico and they stay in just a resort, right? But yeah, how do you travel?
So I generally don't like doing short trips. I generally like to do sort of longer stays away. I don't do all inclusive. I almost always stay in like B&Bs, sort of in places where they have like a lot of culture. I'm much more about being close to people, being close to what's going on the ground. How else do I travel? I generally like to have a few little plans. So I generally kind of have some markers of what I vaguely want to do. So I'm planning a trip for from September. I'm going to about 5 different countries.
September to
I live in Barcelona, but I'm going to 5 different countries in September and coming back in the new year. But generally, I like to have a vague
September
plan.
to January, you're going to 5 different countries.
Yeah. Not a digital nomad though. Don't say it.
Not a digital nomad. Did we?
Not a digital nomad. Do not say it. But I generally like to have a vague structure for what I kind of want to do. So one part is like visiting my family. One part is kind of I'm going to Istanbul with a friend, so it's kind of about catching up with him, experiencing the culture, experiencing the nightlife. Then I'm going to Bali, which is going to be more kind of health, self-care, nightlife too. But I kind of think about vaguely what is the vibe. I'll probably use the word vibe a lot to the annoyance of probably everyone listening to this podcast. I use it a lot because I think it's a very important.
I love it. It's all about the vibes.
There's only 2 of us here. Nobody could stop us from using
it. The vibe police is not here.
There are no vibe polices. We can say it as many times as we want. But yeah, I generally like to kind of have a feel for what I want to do, and then to kind of structure it kind of loosely, and then to leave a lot of space open for how I want to flow in that moment. That's kind of how I like to structure my travel.
So you have a general structural idea, right? Because I know, for example, we're going to Bali together, right? And in Bali, we're planning to do that kind of month in that villa. But within that, so there's a structure, but within that, there's probably going to be a lot of malandraging, as we say. Right?
I feel like you have to explain the concept of malandraging. I hope you explain the concept of malandraging in one of your podcasts.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know what malandraging is, go on Google for now and just Google malandraging. It's a Brazilian word. Me and Tom use it a lot.
Mike uses it a lot. Mike uses it all the time.
But no, it's interesting you say that with your traveling, because to me, knowing you, it feels that the way you flow in life, actually, especially in the last year, is quite similar to how you're talking about your travel. You like to have your structures, and yet you like to leave a parameter for, whatever could happen, fun or diversity or creativity.
The anything can happen.
The anything could happen, right?
One of my favorite things in life, yeah. Generally in life, this is how I work with my work, how I do with my generally with my life. I'm very structured. I kind of put a lot of structures in place. have a lot of habits, a lot of routines that kind of help to keep my life together. And then
mm,
I try, and this is kind of, I guess, where I kind of come in and out of flow. I try to put in a lot of spaces for different things. This is my space for free time. This is my space to just go to the beach. This is my space for literally do whatever I want. If I want to go left, I go left. If I go right, I go right. If I cross, you can do whatever
I
you
want to
want.
spin around in a circle. I
If I
spin
want to
around in
sit
a
around in a circle,
circle.
then I will do that. And that's kind of what I think the traveling is, because I think I've kind of come out of flow a bit. I've been really focused on getting certain things off the ground with my career. I've been learning Spanish. So I've been basically, I think on one side, I've been very focused. I've been very fixed. I've been very like tied down, and I'm sort of feeling quite restless and quite itchy. And I think I've got, with the travels, I'm really trying to sort of express that other side of the flow, which is really just acting on impulse, acting on what I want to do in that moment. Do I want to sleep? Do I want to go out? Do I want to walk? Do I not want to walk? Do I not want to do anything? I can do anything, and I think that's kind of with the challenge I'm facing now, is I've kind of come a little bit out of flow because I've been focusing too much on too many things. So this is kind of, I guess, my correction. This is my way of trying to bring my life back into flow.
It's so interesting, actually, you say about that, because, I was actually thinking the other day, recently with starting this podcast and everything like that, I've always said to myself, I think mainly because of my career, maybe as well because of the environment that I was in, right? I mean, we both know each other from London for a long time. I've always told myself that I wasn't a super creative person, right? So I also shut down a creativity part of me. But actually, one thing that I'm loving, for example, about the podcast and about the process of this journey is a whole creative side being born. And it's interesting because I think that sometimes when it comes to flowing, we have different flows for different times, right? Which is quite cool. But what do you think it means then? Let's talk about it. Let's get into the flow. Let's talk about that. What do you think it means to live a life in flow? I feel you do it quite well, right? What does it mean to you to live your life in flow?
Yeah, I was actually describing this to my friend Martin. We were talking about our lives and kind of the change that we've kind of had recently. We both had a lot of change in our lives. By both of our admissions, are going super well. And I was kind of trying to describe it to him, but I was like, kind of everything feels quite easy. It feels quite seamless, right? It feels like you get up. I have a little routine where I wake up and play computer games. I wake up, I play a bit of computer games. I do a little bit of work. I do my Spanish class. It sort of feels like a bit of a dance, right? It doesn't really feel like you're thinking too much about what you do. You're just sort of doing it. You're just sort of doing your move. You're doing your dance. You're not really thinking too much. You're not well, you are thinking, but like in terms of like how you direct yourself, you're just kind of going with your energy. And it doesn't really feel like it feels like you can switch off. It feels like you're actually just doing things on instinct, on intuition. And it's just really about, just trying to describe it in ways that didn't use the word flow, because that's obviously what we're trying to describe. Kind of like a dance, really. A dance where you don't have to think too much about what you're doing. You're just sort of doing it naturally. Your natural instincts are kind of at full.
I agree. I feel the same way. I think, the whole concept of this podcast came from jiu-jitsu, like, and in jiu-jitsu,
Mike.
I
a little story about Mike before we continue. Mike likes to do things and then shamelessly self-promote on. So Mike, as he probably touched on in the earlier podcast, did Ironman for a while. And
wait, what time are we on?
4 years before you knew his name was Michael.
10 minutes in.
Before you knew his name was Michael, you'd already known he had done an Ironman. There were stickers on his phone. There was a backpack. there was everything. Advertising everywhere. And jiu-jitsu is the new Ironman. Jiu-jitsu is the new Ironman.
Absolutely.
I'm surprised you even know his name is Michael without knowing he does jiu-jitsu. One and the same.
I really shouldn't promote the jiu-jitsu thing that much, because it's not like I'm even that great, but it's obviously a big part of my life. But I think that the flow concept, what you're talking about, it happens in jiu-jitsu, people, like where you become consciously aware of what you're doing, the structure of the movements, of the mechanics of whatever's going to happen, but you can do it subconsciously, right? And that sounds like what you're saying, because obviously when you start jiu-jitsu, you don't know what's happening. You just want to, grab someone and squeeze them as hard as you can. And that's really not the thing to do. And I think sometimes people go through life like that, right?
Mm,
But I think what you're talking about is where you've created, you mentioned like a routine. You create this routine,
mm.
and then you just become so good at it that you can do it subconsciously.
Yeah. Yeah, I think actually one of the things I think that helps me to kind of be in flow, like to help me feel like I have all my bases covered is to make sure, I think we discussed this, but like the basics, a lot of my life basics are in place first, right? So I think it's that analogy of like, you have a jar, right? And if you want to fill it up, you put the rocks first, then the sand, then the water. You don't go
What is
water.
this?
Have you ever heard that analogy? It's basically an analogy about filling up your life with the most important things. There's a jar, and
Uh-huh.
then you
The jar analogy by Thomas.
jar analogy comes out. But basically, you have big rocks, and you have to put the big rocks in the bottom first, and
Okay.
then you add in sand, and then you add in water. And if you pack it in that way, you can fill up your life. You can maximize the life of the most important things. But if you add sand first, so sand being one of the less important things, you can't add the big rocks in afterwards. You have to add the big rocks in first. If you use
Thomas,
that in future podcast, I want to shout out.
Thomas, that's fucking beautiful. Fucking beautiful.
Anyway, like having the basics down, so having the big rocks in. So I think we discussed this. Like for you, I think it's your fitness. So fitness, good sleep, good nutrition, good relationships, good whatever your
What is it for you? What is
thing.
it for you?
What is it for
What is
me?
your rocks, sand, and water?
Well, for me, I'm really realizing time alone is a very, very big one. Making sure I schedule sufficient time alone and time off for me to decompress. Because I'm the type of person who that takes on a lot of stuff. I'm just perpetually trying new things, taking on new things, new projects, new languages. So for me, it's actually the slowing down and disconnecting from people, from work, from stimulation, from stuff that actually is one of my biggest things that I'm working on doing. This time you have a hard cutoff. You're not allowed to do any like improvement stuff. You're not allowed to learn anything. You're just only supposed to do this. No talking with people, no going out, just like keeping that time sacred is a very, very important block for me every day.
Dude, I've been obviously, I've been doing this like as well the last 18 months, year. And it's really a game changer to just spend time with yourself doing fuck all, like do nothing.
Underrated. Underrated.
Yeah. Like, what are you doing? I'm spending time with myself. Doing what? Nothing.
Yeah.
Like it feels weird in the beginning, but after a while, it's one of my favorite times of the week.
Yeah.
I love it.
Especially when you get asked for weekend plans, you almost feel obliged sometimes to be like, I'm doing X and Y and Z. And sometimes you're doing pretty cool things, but a lot of the time I'm just like, I have zero plans. And I happily say I have zero plans. And that doesn't mean I don't end up like doing stuff, but like for me, just having that big empty space is actually like really nice.
Yeah.
I think it's because I don't struggle to fill it. I think that's the thing. If I want to fill it, I can fill it. But for me, having the space is everything. Feeling like I don't have I have no obligations is very important. That feeling of no one needs me, no one wants anything from me. I don't have to do anything is very important. And that's what the weekend often feels like. So space is one of my basics. I think fitness, like we discussed, my fitness, so I play football right now. I've started playing
You play more than
futevolley.
You play what do you play? What is it?
Well, I play futsal. We just did a tournament we were the worst team in the league, 11 out of 11. Didn't win a single game for Rua. But I also play like kind of other formats as well. And as of last year, I started playing futevolley, which is a Brazilian game, which I'm sure Mike knows. Yeah, of course he knows. He's played with me. But it's basically like beach volleyball on a beach volleyball court with a beach volleyball net, but you play it the same kind of dynamic with volleyball, but you're not allowed to use your hands. So it's a lot of like your head, your feet, fuche.
Very physical, very difficult.
Very difficult, very difficult. So for the last year, I basically just been like a few times a week going training, doing like drills, basically every few days, just doing drills for this. So getting better, improving. It was
super funny the last time, not the last time, maybe one of the recent times I was in Barcelona and we started playing with these Israeli boys, right? And me and what were we doing, Thomas? We were playing
just keepy ups.
We were doing keepy ups. Which is just keeping the ball in the air, right? We're just keeping the ball in the air with our feet, with our chest, with whatever part of our body apart from our hands, right? And we were doing okay. Like if we could do a rally of 10.
How do you feel you did, Mike?
I'm very much a low minimum, maximum output type of player, which really annoys Thomas because it means I do very little running.
Basically, that's absolutely no running. Minimum effort.
Thomas is the exact opposite, maximum effort, and a lot of times it works, sometimes it doesn't. But we got approached by these group of what? How old were they, Tom? 19?
Well, actually, what was it? It was like initially, this is a side story. We're gonna have to go back to basics in a second, but yeah, I think it was like a two. This guy came and asked us if he could do keepy uppies with us, and there was like one guy, and then a second guy came, and we were just doing keepy uppies, and by like a half an hour later, there was like six guys who I swear were probably from the Israeli futevolley, the national team or something, doing all this crazy stuff, and we'd basically been kind of kicked out of our game, and we were just kind of like spectators. We were just like standing around watching these guys play, do this crazy stuff, just being like, what in the world is happening? But it was they were good. They were really good.
That's an idea of how good these guys were, right? If you know volleyball, you have the volley nets, right? You have the volley net, and they could jump and put their feet on the volley net and kick the ball over. They were like little ninjas, these guys. But yeah, that was a good time. Okay, so with you, you've got obviously the concept of time by yourself. You've got your sports.
Or fitness, and that changes for me. Again, I'm quite flowy. I mean, football is something I've played my whole life, but what I do outside of that is, again, it kind of is like what I feel I need at that point in time. So for example, we used to do for one period, it was like all about cycling, long distance cycling, triathlon. For other periods, it was yoga. I did a lot of yoga. Some periods it's more about the gym. So it really changes a lot, but I always find I'm most happy when I'm exercising regularly. And usually it's something that involves being with other people. It's something it's not super like structured. So it's not like you have to be like thinking so much about what you're doing. You can just kind of show up and do your thing naturally. And sometimes that comes with the type of sport you're doing. And sometimes I think it comes with skill. Like, so yoga at the beginning, I was quite bad at it. By the end, it was kind of second nature to me because I'd done so much of it. So but a lot of it is about skill, but having enough skills that you can kind of switch off your mind and kind of be in it. Sports is one. And yeah, I mean, just taking good care of yourself.
Listen, why do you think the sport changes? Because I was thinking about this with myself recently, right? I'm very similar with you on that. I used to play rugby. I then played football. I then did triathlon. I'm now doing Ironman. Did Ironman. I'm now doing jiu-jitsu. And it always changes. And I was thinking about this, whether the sport we're doing, because I think a lot of people have sport, fitness as one of their pillars, right? And I was thinking about, is there a reason the sport keeps changing? And does that match with the period of life that we're in?
100%. So I was thinking about like London, when you're cycling a lot. I mean, London has got a terrible climate. It's cold, it's rainy.
Little side note. Sorry, hashtag sorry, London.
Like, it's raining all the time, right? And if you work in an office, like, you end up just spending tons of time in your house, right? You're just always indoors. You're always in an office. You're always in your house. You're always in the tube. And cycling was very much the antidote to that, right? Even if it was raining, you can get out on your bike. You could spend the Saturday afternoon in the park. We used to go to Richmond quite often, cycle around there. So it was just like the antidote to that sort of like kind of really fixed life where you're always indoors, always doing the same thing. It was freeing. You could spend a whole day out in the outdoors. And I think for me, cycling was very much so in Barcelona, I don't really have that problem because I'm always outdoors and stuff. So I don't really feel the need to get on my bike for 8 hours because I'm spending tons of time outdoors anyway. So it definitely reflects kind of the needs of what I want at the moment. So for example, with footvolley, I started playing because I was kind of new in Barcelona. I'd been here like a few times for a few months, but I was basically like looking for like, a new community, some new friends. And I was just walking on my favorite beach here in Barcelona, a beach called Bogatel, where we have a lot of good memories because we used to play volleyball there a few good summers ago. And I just saw these guys playing this game and I was like, that looks sick. And I was like, do it for the brand.
Yes, do it for the brand. Do it for the brand.
But it was so cool. So they have this move, I think Mike was trying to explain what it is, but they call it the shark attack, where it's basically like
shark attack.
It's basically like in volleyball, you do the sets just before the smash. And that's kind of the smash. But basically the idea is you jump up with your body's flat like this. And you have to get your body kind of in line with the net. So you have to jump pretty high. And then if you imagine if this is your foot, you have to get it over the net. And you have to smash it down. So it's kind of like a smash with your foot where you have to jump. And it's crazy. It looks really good.
I'll be honest. I got lost at jump.
Cool. For the brand. But for a disclaimer, we're not doing Shark Attack just yet. But the game, like a lot about, like, ironically, back to the basics thing. A lot about the game is about doing the basics, right? Doing your movement on the sand right, not crossing your legs, and getting the basic move with your foot right. Because like 90% of the game is being able to control well with your foot. So yeah, focusing a lot on the basics, improving. Maybe by the next podcast, I'll be able to show you the Shark Attack in real life. But
Wow.
poco a poco.
Poco a poco. Poco a poco.
Yeah. We are actually. Did you tell our listeners about your potentially doing tournaments with me next summer?
Oh gosh.
About your pivots.
That would be that's one of the goals, right? I think one of the goals would be so cool. I mean, one of the things we did in the past together was we cycled from London to Paris, right, for 3-4 days. That was amazing. Yeah, I think playing volleyball would be not volleyball, playing futevolley would be fantastic. So, okay, let's look at this with you. So your concept of flow is where you have, and a lot of the stuff you're talking about actually follows a similar pattern. It's like there's a general structure to how things should go. And then you have what's the word? You have the space for your creativity and the malandraging and whatever needs to happen. And
go left if you want to go left, so go right if you want to go right.
Whatever you want to do.
In the middle of the road, you can do it,
Yeah. And then you have this great concept of the jar, which has the big rocks, the sands, and then the water. So for you, your big rocks, which is what
you're definitely gonna need to give me a shout out every time you use that now on.
Man, I'm gonna call that the jar analogy. Very creative. But when you look at your jar, your rocks are like time by yourself, your fitness. Is there anything else, or is that kind of what else is there? Like what else is in your jar?
Yeah, I mean the third thing, I mean, obviously there's a lot of things, right? There's good self-care, there's good sleep, I guess, without sort of going into that way. I guess probably the third main thing is making sure I get the quality time with the right people. So the people that like fill me up for different reasons. Like certain people are like, they bring like happiness and joy and fun into my life. Some people bring like clear thinking. Some people can tell me about their relationships. And because I've lived such a different set of lives. Someone actually once said, it's like you've lived 6 different lives. And I was like, oh, that's actually an interesting way of looking at it. I think making sure I keep people in. I spend quality time with people from each of those phases of life to sort of make me feel like I'm sort of connected with all the different parts from all the different phases. So having like continuous quality time with a lot of the different people from the different phases of life that are still important to me, that still, I wouldn't say add value, it sounds a bit transactional, but some people are very much in your life today. And some people were, friends for a time or people for a time, but sort of trying to keep the people from the different phases that still fit in your life well, that you still have some alignment with in your life continuously. So I'd say it's probably those 3 are probably what keeps me sane, semi-sane.
Dude, I think the last one's awesome because I think it's beautiful, because I think actually, I was thinking about this the other day. Like I have some friends, right? I have one of my closest, in fact, he might be on the podcast at some point. He's an amazing guy. He was rowing and he was trying to get into Henley, and we met at boarding school. So I've known him since I was maybe 13, 14, but we live very different lives, and we've lived very different lives for many years, actually, maybe over a decade. But what's interesting is because of the connection that we have from being in that period of life where we met when we were in boarding school, we've just, carried the relationship, right? And it's not like we have loads in common. We have enough in common to have a beautiful relationship, and I love him to bits. But we're not exactly living the same life, So it's interesting. Some people, they just stay in your life, and some people they need to flow out, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's the thing about being very growth minded, because I think both of us are very growth minded people. And I think if you're constantly moving,
listen, what does that mean? Growth minded. I mean, I know me and you know what it means, but what do you mean by that?
Open to change, open to learn, open to experience, open to I think it's just openness to change, really. Openness to change and constant desire to change and improve yourself. Be it through languages, to new mental models, to better patterns of relationships, to formal education, through learning new sports, new things. The desire to like, I wake up almost every day and I have this like burning desire to learn something new, to experience something new, to have a new interaction, to have to get a little bit better at something. For me, I have this like fuel, this curiosity, this passion, this desire to just experience everything. So that I think is what fuels like my growth mindedness. It kills me to go out in Spain and not be able to understand people, so I'm going for daily Spanish lessons. So it's like constantly being open to and putting the things
I was
into
just
place.
about to ask you that, to give us an example, and you just mentioned your Spanish. Do you like how is that process for you? Like, how have you been? I know, because we talk about it, right? But the audience doesn't. How has that process been for you, the whole learning Spanish? And it's obviously, it sounds like what you say, it sounds super advertising and it sounds super sexy, right? Have the growth mindset. I wake up every day super passionate and I want to go and learn shit. But let's be honest, real life sometimes isn't always like that. And I know
total mess. It's a total mess.
No, but the concept actually is very beautiful, right? So when you look at this concept of willing to learn something new, why, what do you think that is it you've always been like that, or did something cause that? Like, because that sounds like a big part of you getting in flow, right?
Yeah, I think it's just like what drives, I don't know, probably I think it's a lot of things drive it, right? And I was explaining to someone, we were thinking about the word passion, like what is passion? And I think passion is like a mix of things, right? It's like genuine curiosity, genuine desire, but then it's also got some other sides mixed in, like fear and insecurity. And it's like I think it's like a big package of all your most potent emotions. And if you learn to sort of like channel those into like productive things that take your life forward, I think that's where you get a lot of that fuel from. Is you take all of those feelings, you combine them into this little thing, and that's like the fuel that takes you to the different. And I think for me, that's my channel. That's kind of growth is kind of the channel for a lot of that strong emotion. I channel it into these productive things.
Interesting. Like, for example, if you have I don't know, if you have something bad happen in your life, whatever, you take that energy. I think I'm quite similar in that way, actually, now that you're saying this. You take that energy and you push that energy into maybe trying to do something new, or your sport, or develop something, and that maybe negative energy that you have, or emotional feeling, or whatever, right? You can kind of translate it into something good for you.
For sure. I'm very much like that. I think for better, for worse, for whether it's fully healthy to do that or not, that's kind of my way of coping with a lot of the difficult stuff in life, is just to channel it into like something good. It's like you get a good outcome from something that's quote bad, a bad outcome. You get a good outcome from a bad outcome.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. So listen, look, when you look at the concept of you getting into flow, right? We know that you think it's the structure, giving yourself the space to have that freedom. You've got this beautiful concept of the jar with the rocks, which you talked about, having your time by yourself. I love it, dude. We're gonna have to have a t-shirt. We're gonna have to have like a jar. We're gonna have to call it Thomas's Rocks. Hey, hashtag. But you've got the concept of like time by yourself, the fitness, spending time with the right people. I think this is both something that you and I in the last year, maybe 18 months, have really refocused, like not just spending time with everybody and anybody, but spending time with the right people. And I think that's very powerful. What do you think triggered all this? Do you think it's was it a process over time, or do you think something triggered it, or do you think it's just the way you've been? Like, how do you think you've developed this flow life or flow state?
It's definitely never been one thing, right? I think nothing in life is one thing. It's always a combination of things. But I guess in life you also have like, like bigger moments where you kind of make the big changes. But yeah, I don't even know where to start with that story. But I guess one of the stories I could say about where I made some big changes was I think we talked about it a little bit in the beginning, the Mongol rally trip. So this was like at a time when I was in London about 6 years ago. And I'd been doing a corporate job for a good few years now, getting the train in Clapham South, taking the train to Bank or London Bridge, wherever I was working at that point in time, and then going to like Canary Wharf, or like just basically like city job, corporate job, commute.
Isn't it crazy sometimes to think like the life we have now, the way we flow now, to the way, because we've known each other for so long, and that way different life, it's crazy to think.
Never went to a corporate job.
No, I never went.
Don't try to get in here and say you can feel the struggles. You have no idea. You don't know the struggle. Don't try to weasel it on here. I know what you're doing.
But I did take the tube to go to the office, so
Okay.
it's kind of the same.
One of the things I was like experiencing, and this was over a long period, and there was a lot of things in my life at that point that needed change. But like, so the working in a physical office, right? The structure of the corporate job, the idea that you have to go to work, the idea that you have to be in an office, the idea of how quickly you can progress, the idea that you have to wear a suit or formal clothes. I kind of was doing that for years, and I hated it, right? I was like, I do all of this stuff, and I probably do 2 productive hours of work a day of actual work. And I basically can't do anything else in all my other time. I come home, it's Monday, I'm tired, I have to shower. Sometimes I have to make food, I have to gym, and then I'm in bed. And then it repeats again. There was no time in that for life. And I was like, I'm living like this, and I probably do 1 to 2 hours of productive work every day. So for me, I was like, this is like the world's biggest waste of time. I mean, I was in the tube, I was in offices, I was in
unfulfillment,
total unfulfillment in relationships. I was very, very unhappy. And that Mongol rally trip, it was actually a friend who suggested it. And he was like, I'm going on this trip. He was doing a sabbatical. And I was just like, yeah, I'm in. And I think for me, that was like I need to do something differently, right? I need to do something that puts me in a new environment with new people, new headspace, far away from everything that I'm doing now. So I have some chance to find what I want to do. And for those who don't know, the Mongol Rally is basically a trip where you drive a car from London to Mongolia. And the idea is, ironically, it's also a little exercise in flow, because the idea is not that you get a good car, that you kind of go smoothly. The idea is that you buy a really shit car, sorry. Is this going on like television in America? You know, can we swear?
Television all over the world, baby.
In case you go viral, we will not use curse words. But yeah, so basically the idea is you get a really bad car or a motorbike or an ice cream truck, whatever you want, and you drive to Mongolia and you have a bunch of experiences and a bunch of stuff happens on the way. During that trip, I was expecting to, find myself, as people often do when they go on journeys, kind of eat, pray, love, pura vida stuff. And what actually happened, ironically, was I hit rock bottom. I came back to work after like 7 weeks of this. I was like, for the first half of the trip, I was pretty happy. For the second part, I was just kind of getting more and more happy. And then I think during that time, it was because I was like, I was expecting to find something, but really needed to happen was I needed to leave so many things in my old life. Anyway, I got back to London. I went back to work. I'd actually got a secondment. So when I came back from the sabbatical, I actually gone to a different team, which were actually a lot better than my last team. And it was actually on paper, it was an all right sort of thing. But like I sat at the screen for like 3 days and I could not even bring myself to do the most simple tasks. It was like every bone, blood cell, everything in my body was just like, nah, we're not doing this anymore. We're done. I ended up taking like a big break off work. I took like a sick leave off work. And basically from that point on, that was a big catalyst, because I got to a point where I was like, it's impossible to continue with this way. And since then, basically, I've across every area of my life just decided that everything was up for challenge. Every relationship, every thought, every idea I had about myself, every idea I had about my work, nothing was safe. Everything was basic. It was basically like you take your whole life and you decide nothing is, on a pedestal. And you take all of those things, you throw them out, and then you're like, you kind of throw it against the wall and you see what actually sticks and what actually holds true for now. And that's something that's really been part of my life right now, is to constantly, ruthlessly challenge ideas, to ruthlessly challenge, do I need this thing? Is this relationship adding value to my life? Is this job bringing me joy? Do I need to make this much money? Do I like living here? I'm constantly challenging the thoughts in my mind to make sure that I'm actually living true to my most current self. Anyway, this could be a podcast in itself, is all the different crises of Thomas's life. But I think if we were to boil it down to one point, that was probably the most like sort of the Hollywood sort of moment. That was the moment. I went on this trip, came back, could not function, realized everything had to change. Like on all the areas of my life. I just needed to like start clean from scratch.
Yeah, it's interesting, dude. It's interesting you had that big moment. I think for me, I think maybe it was around this because I remember when you went to do the Mongolia rally, right? It was such a big thing within the French.
Call it the right name. What
The
did you call
Mongol
it?
rally, sorry. I've never called it the right name. I've always called it the Mongolian rally. But yeah, I remember when you went to do the Mongol rally and the whole friendship group was like, wow. Half of us were impressed, half of us were
Good
like,
for the brand.
yeah, I was like, what? What is the fuck is this? Mongol rally. What is that? But anyway, you did it. And I think, yeah, for me, my catalyst was I had a big breakup in my mid-20s. And then that's kind of why I started my Ironman journey. And that kind of led me on this path of kind of self-improvement, self-growth, and kind of the same process, cutting out. I think one of the reasons I left London was I was done with just the energy of the city, moved to Barcelona, and as we know, and I think yeah, it's important to, like you said, start cutting things out. But at what point, or challenging things? But I guess my question to you before we go on to one of the final things, which is kind of how you maintain your flow. We've talked a little bit about your reflow, but it'd be great to talk about that. But before we do that, how do you, if you're constantly having the mindset of challenging every area of your life to stay in your current, best form, at what point do you just stop challenging things and just be like, it's cool? Or is that something that's always going on because you're constantly evolving as a person? So it's a part of the flow is loving that process, like you're saying about learning, right? Because with learning, for example, it sounds really sexy, constantly be learning something new, right? But actually, it's a really fucking painful process, right? Because when you start,
it's ironic actually, because actually the process of learning is a painful thing.
It's a pain in the
Talk
ass.
about this. Learning Spanish is painful. Every day it's like, and ironically, that's probably why I need all of that time off. But the irony of learning growth is that it is what puts your life back into flow. So maybe the analogy is, that acceptance of that life has that pain, and that pain pushes you to the other side where you're in flow and you love life and stuff. So it's almost like maybe the sort of like deep acceptance of the pain equals growth equals flow. That's kind of, there you go. Write it down.
Let's write that down. What was that?
The
pain equals growth equals flow.
This is good content.
Hey, when we start doing merch, we can put that on merch. That's funny.
Whenever you're not high anymore, you got to look at your notebook and you're like, what nonsense.
But dude, that would be great to have that on t-shirts, on a t-shirt. That would be wonderful. Maybe we'll do that. If enough people want that
People
on
love the formulas. They love it.
If enough people want that on a t-shirt, let us know. But okay, listen. So I guess, yeah. So I guess you maintain your flow really by some of the stuff you talked about, the slowing down, having time by yourself, fitness, right?
Before we actually move on, you did actually ask an interesting question about how do you know kind of when to stop, right? So the idea of just like, before we move on, these are interesting questions, but before you move on, how do you know when to stop? But like, you're right, because in the beginning, there was almost nothing felt good. And I was constantly just kind of sometimes spinning in like different sort of like stuck patterns. But I think the thing about it is over time, it's like a really slow, gradual process. If you're challenging stuff in an organized, structured way over time, you start to develop little bits of flow. It's like a spectrum, right? You get a little bit of flow and a little bit of flow. And it's just like over time, areas of your life start to feel right. And I think a lot of it is culminating to what all the stuff I'm doing in Barcelona here, all the different little projects I'm taking on, languages I'm learning, starting a new company, starting to get into I just decided today. I've been like wanting to do writing for ages. I've always thought I'd be very good at storytelling. I love sort of describing complex things simply. And like a lot of the different areas of my life that I am passionate about, football, data, they're all sort of coming together in this like thing. So you kind of stop the growth when it starts to feel right, like when your life starts to feel like the dance, when you stop feeling like every day thinking about your life is a grind, that's when you stop. You stop when it feels right.
Yeah.
And then the more decisions you get right, the less you have to sort of like agonize about, am I going in the right way? That a lot of your anxiety disappears, and you actually start to just feel in the moment. You start to feel present. You start to feel good. And then how you feel is how you know when to stop. So yeah.
Explain that. How you feel is when you know how to stop. What is that feeling? Describe that feeling when you know, okay, it's time to stop. What is that feeling? Is that feeling a feeling of, is it happiness? Is it contentment? Is it exhaustion? Is it, oh my God,
I would describe it as ease. Like life feels easy. You're not necessarily doing easy things, but the way you go, I wouldn't say it feels effortless, but it doesn't feel painful. It feels, you're just moving.
It flows.
It's like you're in water. It flows. I was trying not to say that, but yes.
I could see.
It's like water, you're in a river, you're just going down, and you're swimming a little bit, and you're not really, it's not like, if you know the feel, like it's I think easier to contrast it with the feeling of grinding, right? We all know the feeling of grinding. You're doing something and every bone in your body is like, stop, this hurts, this is painful, I hate this, it's like, it doesn't feel like that. Little caveat to the learning, because sometimes the learning feels like that, but the learning is kind of in a capsule where the learning is an essential part of the future flow.
I think a big part of it, actually, when you think about that, because I was thinking about this recently, right? There are certain things that we might start learning if we have a growth mindset that we're not very excited about because we're on a certain path, right? Like, for example, let's say you're on a career path that maybe you're not truly connected with, but you have to do exams for that, and you just think that that's bullshit, right? It's not that you don't have a growth mindset, it's that growth journey doesn't really link with the truth version of yourself. Like, for example, for me, like there's certain things like jiu-jitsu, for example, the growth journey it is continuously very steep because but once you start to flow a little bit like what you're saying, it becomes a bit addictive because it connects to what you want to be doing, right? So I guess one of the questions for you is, how do you, because I think like exactly that, I think you did the career thing where I remember you used to do exams, right? So it's not that you didn't have the growth mindset, but is the fact that it feels like a grind, is that like a signal to you that maybe that path isn't right for you? Or because with Spanish you had your grind.
The pain doesn't tell you stop. The pain tells you think. That's what I think it tells you. It's like, what is this pain? Is this pain leading to the outcomes I want? Because I think there's always pain in life, right? But I think pain doesn't say stop. Pain just says, am I dealing with the right pain? Is this pain going to get me what I actually want? Or is this the pain of like regret, anxiety, feeling stuck, etc.? So it's like, it just tells you like, think about what you're doing and whether this is right for you.
I guess one of the ways you reflow is you talked about earlier, right? You rechannel that energy into some sort of growth mindset, because that energy then translates into some positive dynamic energy for you. And I guess part of that process is to connect with that pain, to understand whether that pain is serving you or if it's not serving you, right? So that links quite nicely. I mean, do you think there's anything else that you do when it comes to reflowing? Like when you fall out of flow, do you think there's anything else that you do, or is it those two main concepts?
Yeah, I think for me, the main thing, I think it goes back to the first thing I actually covered. Was the first or second? One of the first things.
The jar! Bring back the jar!
We want the jar. No jar. It's no more jars. I think for me, it's taking space, like getting myself in a new environment. And this is why I do not identify as being, okay, firstly, I hate the word digital nomad, but I don't actually identify as being a traveler, because I actually really like being planted somewhere. I like home. I like these concepts. And the traveling is often something I do out of what I think is necessity, right? So some of it is because I've had a very international upbringing. I have like family everywhere. So 2 places I'm going to on this 5-part stopover are for family.
5-part tour with Thomas Zenkner.
Traveler, not traveler.
Buy your tickets.
Digital nomad, not digital nomad. But a lot of this, I think, so I don't identify as that label.
Dude, one of the things Thomas wants to do, we want to do together, is stand-up comedy, right? That could literally be your sketch, just while we're on it. Digital nomads, not digital nomads.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of good ones, a lot of good content for that. But I've actually just realized with some of my writing projects, I was like, maybe we can channel some of the comedy stuff into my writing.
Yeah.
And I was like, there we go. Humor, data, German, what could be more funny?
All the vibes.
All the vibes. So I think I'm getting a lot more of that. It's that creative inspiration, a desire to like be funny and stuff. I think I'm going to get a lot of that actually from this writing thing. I think it's very good for my business, and I think it brings together a lot of the areas of life that I've needed to sort of like channel. Now I've completely lost where we were in the question.
No, listen, dude, I think what we were saying is when you look at your flow, right? For you, it's all about having a life that's kind of structured, but gives you that space to have the creativity, right? And have the space to discover yourself and discover more things. When you look at how you get in the flow, slow it down, give yourself space give yourself.
That's what we were talking about. We were talking about space and distance and the traveling. So that was what it was. So the traveling for me is a lot about, I think my life has gone a little bit out of flow in Barcelona. When I started my life here, my life was flowing. And now it feels like it's flowing a bit less. And I kind of have some inclination as to why. But for me, one of the best ways to sort of reset and go back into what I really want to be doing is often to take space, go somewhere new where I don't know people, new environment, which kind of forces me to go back to like, it takes me out of autopilot. It puts me to an environment where I'm actually thinking about what I want, what is important to me, how do I feel?
Honestly, dude, for me, I totally connect with that, because I think for me with traveling, it's a very similar thing. It's a very similar thing. I remember when I left London in 2019, I'd been in London, a decade, right? And I had this feeling that I wanted to go, and then I went to Bali for a month. And it was in Bali 2019 that I decided I am done. I'm out of here. And I moved to Barcelona, literally a couple of weeks later. And I think but going away, when you don't have the normal everyday routine and the structure, that space to kind of be creative and, discover what you really want actually really helps you when you come back to your normal everyday life, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And that is why I travel. I do not identify as a traveler in the least, although I have been to a lot of countries. I have done a lot of things.
How many countries do you think you've been to?
I actually counted this. Someone gave me an app for counter. I think I'm at like 45.
45 countries.
I was trying to decide if that was a lot or not.
I don't know how many I've been to. I mean, how many countries are there? Is it 157 or 97?
Around 200.
Yeah, so it must be 197.
There's a lot of islands and territories and stuff, and I guess
197. Dude, listen, look, just to wrap up.
Federations are there? That's the question. You can do it by football federations. How many football federations have you been to?
How many? I don't know.
I think there's over 200, but then like the UK, for example, has one for England and for Scotland and stuff.
Gotcha. Well, listen, look, to wrap up, I think this has been such an awesome conversation. The jars, we've had so many concepts. We've had the structure. We've had time by yourself. We've had the traveling. We've had the Mongol rally. We've had it all, right?
All the vibes.
All the vibes. So I guess, listen, to wrap up, do you want to leave us with maybe a quote or an ideology that you have, whatever? Yeah, whichever one you want.
I was thinking about this because there's a lot of nuggets I like to drop.
Golden nuggets.
A lot of golden nuggets. I think the one I like the most, and I want to share with most, someone who is actually like trying to like get their, like change their life, is that like small actions are much more powerful than like, a million different plans, right? Tons and tons and tons and tons of small actions. Like it's the small actions that really make your life, right? If you want to change your life, every day is a chance to reset and take some small actions. Like that is really, instead of like some grandiose plans of what do I want to do? Where do I want to be in life? The littlest actions every day, every moment are really what get you there. And that is all I have to say about that.
That is all I have to say about that.
That is all I have to say about that. I just watched it actually a few weeks ago, Forrest Gump.
So good, huh? So good.
My accent used to be better though.
Guys, it's been an awesome, awesome time. Thomas, thank you so much for being
here. Guys, it's just two of us. Huh? It's just two of us. Who are you talking to?
Hey, guys. Tom, it's been awesome. My name's Mike. Guys, thank you so much for watching the show. See you on the next. For now, go find your flow.